We're back and set for our first major conversation right here on The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. Well, young people are at the heart of Africa's development agenda, with over 75% of Africa's 1.2 billion inhabitants under the age of 35 and 453 million Africans aged 15 to 35. It goes without saying that the development outcomes of Africa's young people have a significant and lasting effect on the continent's trajectory. Now, the challenges Africa faces in education, employment, health, and governance are most acutely felt by Africa's youth. It is against this backdrop that the African Union Commission is celebrating what it calls the Africa Youth Month in the month of November 2022 under the theme Breaking the Barriers to Meaningful Youth Participation and Inclusion in Advocacy. Breaking the barriers to meaningful youth participation and inclusion in advocacy. Now, the Africa Youth Charter, adopted in 2006, proclaims the 1st of November every year as Africa Youth Day. And in 2022, given the new contexts for the youth landscape on the continent, spurred by COVID-19 pandemic, the Commission is celebrating African youth in the entire month of November. That's really amazing. Now, it is in the same spirit that the Nigerian youth, under the umbrella of the Nigerian Youth Congress and the Nigerian Youth Parliament, have decried the low inclusion, what they describe as the low inclusion, in the helm of affairs in the country. And they're calling on the federal government to hear the yearnings of the youth so that they can contribute their quota to the development of the nation and Africa at large. Glad to say, joining us this morning to discuss youth inclusion in governance is the Director General of NECA, Adewale Smart Oyerinde. He joins us live Zoom from Lagos, Nigeria. Mr. Oyerinde, good morning to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Good morning for having me. Good morning.
All right. Now, do you agree with the youth that they're not, included in governance in the country? I mean, in the real sense of the word, I don't know what age you're going to give to young people. Would it be ending at 35? Would it go to 40? Looking at the governance landscape in the country today, are youth underrepresented?
Well, thank you very much once again. For me, I think the issues are three in the context. Three issues in one. One is the issue of readiness. The second issue is the issue of inclusion. And the third is the issue of participation. Now, is the youth, are they ready? Fundamentally, I will say yes. If you look around within the context of global trends now, most of the CEOs of big organizations, most of those that are changing the landscape of development in most countries are basically youth. So are the youth, are they ready? I will say yes. One, issue of inclusion. Are they sufficiently included? Are youth sufficiently included? I will say no. Because inclusion, is contingent on balance of power. Where the power, political power, or the power to decide where it tilts to, in whichever context, determines who is included or who is not included. And with the context of Africa, using Africa as a base, where money politics is the order of the day, then it becomes difficult for an average youth to get included if you don't have the means or you don't have the influence, either intellectually, either within the context of mobilization of the people. If you don't have that, or you're not bringing anything substantial to the table, then it becomes difficult for you to be included. And then lastly, for me, is the issue of participation. Are the youth participating enough? I will say no. With the mass number of youth we have in Nigeria, with the mass quantum of youth we have in Africa, the youth have the potential to step up their participation, increase their political awareness, and actually take the game to the older generation that are sufficiently ruling the political space. So three issues: inclusion, participation, and readiness. Readiness, yes. Inclusion, not sufficiently enough. Participation, not good enough.
Well, but we understand that the president has signed a not too young to run bill, and so we think that the youth should actually be flying and soaring very high. What's then is the challenge?
You know, it boils to the issue of inclusion that I mentioned and the context in which politics is played in Nigeria and also in most parts of African countries, where you need tons and tons of naira or dollars to play in that field. Ordinarily, it's not supposed to be so. In an environment where issues dominate the political landscape, where your intellectual capacity or your ability to deliver is central to whether you are elected or not. In that context, yes, the youth might play a major role. But when the dynamics changes and what determines who gets what is how much you bring to the table, how much you are able to contribute, then it changes the dynamics and puts the youth at a disadvantage. In an environment where sufficiently a lot are still trying to make ends meet, a lot are still trying to get stable jobs. Their businesses is not growing, with different kind of frustration and challenges. Then survival becomes the first priority for an average youth. How do I survive? Before you now think of, okay, how do I have the cash? Do I have the money to actually put into politics? So no matter the law, certain things you cannot legislate. You cannot legislate youth participation. You cannot legislate youth inclusion, but you must create an environment that makes their inclusion, their participation very, very easy and very, very encouraging.
Interesting. Three indices you raised there: inclusion, participation, and readiness. Very interesting. But I'd like to put it to you, Mr. Adewale Smart Oyerinde. Now, when it comes to the indices, you talked about the inclusion, that maybe it's not as low as people think and people probably opposing, because some would argue that you look at the length and breadth of the political space. If we were to talk about elected positions, we have a significant amount of young people. I mean, I would put, categorize young people in our Nigerian context here. I don't know what age you're going to use, but I mean, let's just say under 40s, for instance. Let's just say under 40s, which is, it's not the global standard, even not the Nigerian standard, but if you look at the age of those who are into their 70s and 80s who are grappling for offices, 40s is not too bad. If you go to the state houses of assembly, across the states, there's several members of the House of Assembly who are in their late 30s, mid 30s. If you go to different positions in the state, special assistants, for instance. I mean, in River State recently, Nyesom Wike swore in 200 special assistants. I can tell you confidently that majority of them, a vast majority, are young people. You go to Cross River State, where Senator Governor or Senator Professor Governor Ben Ayade swore in at least 300,000 special assistants, and Messi knows what I'm talking about. A vast majority of them, Messi knows that again, are young people. I don't know where to, look at the federal government. There are young people who have positions that we don't see them on TV, but they are there. So is this view that young people are not in governance really true? I don't want to talk about Yaya Bello and some other young people, but let's leave governors got the governorship position aside. Is it true?
You mentioned different the recent appointments by certain governors. No, I think we should separate the issues of political exigency from the main issue of governance. I can appoint 5 or 6 special advisors whose advice I'm subject not to accept, whose advice I'm at liberty to discount. But let's look at the core issues of governance, within the real context of governance. And let's put the issue of advisors at the second realm of governance. Let's look at the presidency. There are so many advisors, so many special advisors, so many senior special advisors. At the State House of Assembly, so many assemblymen, State House of Assemblymen, so many advisors. But in the real context of governance, and we all know the context in which most of those youths get into power, how much influence or how much relevance can they exert in the governance of that state, or in the governance of the country, or in the governance of the ministry? So until you start separating the context that brought them in, because we cannot rule out those contexts. That I was appointed a senior special assistant doesn't give me the opportunity in totality to influence governance, as it were, especially when the authority, when the final ball stops on the table of whoever appoints me. And the maxim that he who pays the piper that takes the tune is applicable here. So I will look at governance within the context of who takes the decision. We're in the 21st century, where technology is ruling the world, where people are planning to build castles in space, where certain decisions have to be taken fundamentally that will affect the lives of millions and millions. So I'd rather look at governance in the context of the ability to take certain decisions, the ability to be responsible and accountable to those decisions. In that context, you have very few youths playing such positions. Political expediency, political necessity, I will not really give much attention to that.
Okay, but so in other words, you're saying that the fact that you have political appointment and being in the position of influencing government decision, two different things, because it's a different thing to become a governor, it's a different thing to become an SE to the governor.
Absolutely.
All right, but quickly, let's look at this, argument. It's something that's still very big, especially as we inch closer to 2023. There's been a lot of argument that we need to have young people. The old ones need to get out of the office. We've seen several tweets, and the fact that we're tired of having, old people, older persons in office. I'd like to ask, do you think that being young is a requisite for good leadership or governance? Is that a criteria to becoming, a good governor or having policies implemented? Does that have anything to do with governance and delivering policies?
No, it's not. It doesn't. It doesn't. I will absolutely. It doesn't. Being young, being a youth, doesn't guarantee success. We have youths, we have young persons that are playing one or two roles in government now. You also have one or two governors that we can call youths, whose performance has not been very, very, very encouraging. And we have, if you look at in Africa, globally, you have presidents that are in their 60s and 70s, and they are piloting the affairs of their country or piloting the affairs of their states, piloting it very well. So being a young person, being a youth is not a prerequisite, it's not a guarantee that the person will do well. I would rather also focus on institutions. We focus more on the person, on the individual. If we build institutions that holds people accountable, it might be less of an issue whether you are elderly, whether you are a young person. Once we have institutions that holds people accountable to your oath of office, to the commitments you made to the state or to the nation, when we have such institutions across board, at the federal, at the state, and at the local government level, then we'll start viewing governance, or people that will put themselves forward for governance. We'll start having a different conversation about all those issues. But currently, we focus too much on the individual. But as you asked, being a youth is not really guarantee that you'll be a success. As we have seen even in our environment, some young persons in government that have not lived up to the expectation of those that elected them, and also to the expectations of generality of Nigerians.
All right. One wonders then why the hula baloo, for youth inclusion in governance, because you talked about the appointed, positions versus the elected positions. With the those who are appointed, as special assistants, for instance, or members of boards. Remember, the president, some months ago, ordered or directed that more youth be included in federal boards. You're saying all these may pale into insignificance if they are not in elected positions. But the National Youth Policy in 2009 defined the youth as those between the ages of 18 and 35. In 2019, the National Youth Policy was rejigged, and a Nigerian youth had a new classification between the ages of 18 and 29 years. That's why the NYC is limited to graduates under the age of 30. What elected positions can someone who is under the age of 30, occupy when you look at bringing a lot of experience to bear as far as governance is concerned? I want us to look at this in the context of the development of the person, the human being now in Nigeria. 18 to 35, would you want to vote for a governor who is 26, 27, 28 years old? Mr. Oyerinde, would you want to vote for a senator who is 28 years old?
Someone I can't remember vividly how old General Gowon was when he was the president. I guess he was in his 30s then. And I will still come back to the issue of institutions and not the individual. Now, before you elect someone, ordinarily there should be some level of pedigree. There should be some level of verifiable achievement within the context of what he has done, where he's coming from. Now, what puts everybody on their toes, or what ensures success on the long run, is the institution. You can be 70, you can be 60. If you don't have strong institutions that puts you under check, then there is tendency for arbitrariness, and there is tendency for too much discretion.
But Mr. Oyerinde, are we not overemphasizing the importance of institutions over the importance of the individual? Because institutions don't run themselves. You talked about experience. You talked about pedigree. If you don't have the pedigree as a young person, you are between 18 and 29. What can an institution do to help you survive? Because you don't have the pedigree, like you said.
But I think,
But I'd like him to answer the question, Mercy.
Now, when we talk of institutions, let's I will not want us to focus too much on the issue of a 27 years old individual. Now, before you are elected, you have to go to the electorate. And we're talking of an ideal situation. You have to sell a program. You have to sell a manifesto. You have to sell your ideas to the electorate. And it is taken that before you sell the idea, you probably have a track record. No matter how small, how little that track record is. It might be 5 years, might be 7 years. You don't need a 50 years experience to do well in governance. Now, your track record will naturally influence the choice of the electorate. And the moment the electorate assesses your track record and realize, look, you are fit for this position, then you get elected. Now, the institutions that we talk about, if people run institutions, and in developed climes, you have a trend of young persons, elderly persons, middle-aged persons in those institutions that serves as control for governance, or that serves as control to people that are in governance, in government. So we cannot discount the issue of institutions. So if you take out the institutions, then we have the issue that we currently have in most African countries, where the state is synonymous to the person that is in office, which is absolutely wrong. So I will align with the context of we build strong institutions. Whoever comes in, whether a young person, a 30-year-old person, a 29-year-old person, the institutions provides the framework in which the person will operate.
Well, so as we actually, close this conversation down, it's a good thing that you have talked about, institutions as most important, because if we have the institutions strong, like you have mentioned, I'm sure the issue of whether or not somebody's young would not be a conversation, because the institution would already, allow for all of that. But generally, as we inch closer to 2023, what should we expect, and what would you advise?
Well, beyond the rhetorics of we want youth inclusion, if the youths are really interested in governance, they should participate. And participation behoves that you must have your voters card. I guess that is late now. You must have your voters card. You must do your mobilization. Enough of the cry for inclusion. I rather align with more of participation. Do your proper mobilization. Get your voters card. Challenge those that are coming to set their manifestos. It is less of I'm going to do this. I think more should be focused on how are we going to do this. If you are going to build refineries, how are you going to do it? If you are going to stop the banditry and improve the security situation, how are you going to do it? So we should do more of asking how are they going to do those things that they promise they will do. And for the youths, I think it's time for them to step up their participation. Enough of Twitter, enough of tweeting, enough of newspaper stand conversations. Everybody should take their place, participate in the electoral process, and make sure that we get the best come 2023.
All right. Fantastic one, Adewale Smart Oyerinde. Thank you so much for doing justice to our questions. And we always are glad to have you. Look forward to having you again on the program. Of course, he's the Director General of the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association right here on The Breakfast. We'll be right back. We have more discussions ahead. Please stay with us.